are back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So my mum is in the hospital at the moment. She has a kidney stone the size of a fucking watermelon in her kidney. She had an operation and she needs 2 more operations to get it removed, but they put her under the general anesthetic or what it is, and she wasn't breathing apparently. They couldn't work out why she wasn't breathing, and then they looked down her throat, and just before her lungs, there was about a 30 to 40 year of cigarette tar mucus buildup. And she's had this emphysema-like cough for fucking maybe 6 or 7 years now. It sounded like the cough off those ads for quit smoking. But they did a scan of her lungs and her lungs are fine. So maybe it was just this mucus buildup. Fucking hell. But I spoke to her just before she went into surgery, and I've never seen her so scared or sober. It's amazing what thinking you're about to die will do to a person's attitude. It's been an amazing turnaround. She was even admitting to a few faults, a few personal faults. I couldn't fucking believe it. She was like, maybe I've made a couple of mistakes in my life. Maybe I have. And I'm like, a couple? All right, let's start small. Let's start real small. Real fucking nervous she was. And I'm like, well, if you're going to live like that, you're eventually going to be in hospital permanently. So I think you should take this as a fucking sign that it's time to start changing things a little bit. And she's like, oh, the kidney stone has nothing to do with alcohol or anything. It's just a fluke. I'm like, you've been a box of wine alcoholic for 35 years and a pack-a-day smoker for longer. Something's going to give at some point. I mean, your mind went a long time ago. Physically, something's going to give. I'm like, it's time to stop drinking now. And she goes, yeah, probably. And that's as close as I've ever heard her come to saying she was going to quit alcohol. She has never come anywhere near the ballpark of a, yeah, probably. That is how tenacious she is, though. She's sitting there in the hospital. We're fucking video calling in the hospital. I can see she's terrified. She's worried she might lose a kidney, and she's even more worried that she won't wake up from the surgery she's about to go into. And still, when you mention giving up drinking, she's only a yeah, probably. I hope this has scared her enough to give up drinking and smoking, because she's not bad when she's not drinking. She's fine. She's just your normal amount of annoying. You can deal with it, but as soon as she has one fucking sip, and it's only one sip she needs, one sip of wine, and it's over, she becomes fucking unbearable. That's not only for me either. This is for outside observers. This is for people who have never met her before and have just walked in. Unbearable. But we'll see what happens. I predict once she's out of the hospital, she's recovered a little bit, starts feeling good, she'll be back on the wines pretty quickly. But you could see it in her eyes. She was very fucking worried. Like, oh fuck, I can't die now. I've wasted my life. I need to start making amends. That's what it felt like to me anyway. We'll see. Only time will tell. Anyway, let's move on. Today is Boyle Breaks History, and we're taking a little bit of a fucking different angle on Boyle Breaks History this week. We're going to add a little bit more spice into the history this year. This will be the first one in a series I like to call the drug series. So Boyle Breaks History this week is cocaine, the second most widely used illicit drug in the world behind marijuana. And I would say cocaine makes it into Boyle's top 5 drugs. I find it to be very overrated, but when you do stumble across the good shit, it is good. And although I say it's overrated, I have still made 3 trips to South America and dabbled with it. So let's get to it. Cocaine is derived from the coca leaf. It has been used by the indigenous people of South America for fucking thousands of years. They would generally chew it or pour it into a tea, some shit like that. And when it's taken in the leaf form, it's a very, very fucking mild stimulant. Trust me on this one, I know. I almost lost like 3 teeth chewing bags and bags full of coca leaves through South America on the buses to just get a little tiny fucking buzz. I did get a pretty good buzz one time, but the size of the chewed up ball of coca leaves I took out of my mouth was about the size of my fist. And my teeth and my jaw were killing me for the next 4 fucking days. So it wasn't really worth it. The coca leaves only have about 0.9% of cocaine in it. It's kind of like cocaine in Australia. You're better off buying a bag of coca leaves in Australia than a little bag of white shit that's going to put you to sleep pretty fucking quickly. So anyway, even though everyone knew that the coca leaves were a mild stimulant, nothing really happened for a long time because when they were shipping the coca leaves back to Europe, they would degrade and chemistry wasn't going very fucking good back then. So it took a minute and it took a fucking German. In 1855, some German cunt named Frederick Gadecki was the first person to isolate the cocaine alkaloid from the leaf. And he didn't even name it cocaine. He named it erythoxyline. So that's the original name of cocaine, erythoxyline. Then a few years later, another German cunt, Dr. Albert Niemann, he developed and improved the purification process. And he named it cocaine from the coca leaf. These Germans were right on top of the cocaine game from the very beginning. That's probably why they got into so many fucking wars. So he improved the purification process, and then Pablo Escobar, a little bit down the track, improved it further. So this is how you extract cocaine from the coca leaf. If you want to know what goes into that lovely little white powder you're putting up your nose as we speak, so this is what you do if you ever get your grubby little hands on a bag of coca leaves. So what you want to do is you want to chop it up finely and you want to add some water and some lime in there. Not the fucking fruit, the fucking building material. The shit the mob and the mafia use to disappear dead bodies. So you want to give the leaves a little bit of a mix up with the water and the lime. Then you need a solvent. And a solvent is just something that dissolves other substances. So you need to use a solvent to dissolve the cocaine alkaloid out of the leaf. So the solvent they generally use for cocaine is diesel fuel, gasoline, kerosene. You can pretty much use any flammable, poisonous substance you've got lying around. So you add the gasoline into the mixture and then you want to give it a stir for 3 days. After 3 days, you have a nice bit of liquid. Then you heat it up to get rid of the wax from the leaves. And then you need to filter it to fuck the leaves off. And then you just have a liquid that you add sulfuric acid to and begin mixing again. This turns the liquid into cocaine sulfate. Then you need to add a little bit more lime to that cocaine sulfate. This neutralizes the sulfuric acid so it doesn't burn through your fucking face. So now instead of a liquid, you should have a yellowy type paste that you can't do shit with, you can't take it, it's still too toxic. So it needs further refinement. So to refine the paste, you need to put it back into some very diluted sulfuric acid and then add an ingredient called potassium permanganate. This permanganate shit, it's actually kind of common. You can use it to clean water and it keeps bananas fresh or some shit like that. But that's the shit that turns it white and it also kills all the bad shit in it. So it becomes more pure. So once you've done that, you need to filter it again and then add ammonia to neutralize the sulfuric acid that you just put in again. And then once you've done that, it needs to be dried. And in that drying process, it turns into cocaine hydrochloride. And that is what we take. It's actually considered a salt. So once that German cunt figured out the purification process, then it started taking off a little bit. People started fucking adding it to shit. Some Italian dude made a cocaine wine, which he gave to the Pope, and the Pope loved it. The Pope would just run around town drinking this cocaine wine. Fucking kids, I suppose. Coca-Cola's original recipe had a pinch of coca leaves as one of the ingredients, and you know what that means. That probably means a fucking ounce of pure cocaine. Sigmund Freud, the psychologist, the guy who came up with the theory of the repressed desire to fuck your mum, that guy. His first ever published medical paper was actually called Uber Coca, where he argued that cocaine was such an effective treatment for alcohol and morphine abuse that you might as well close the asylums. It definitely helps with alcoholism, but not stopping it. And Freud experimented on himself by taking large quantities of cocaine over a 12-year period. He was a fucking cokehead. And so that's a little bit of the early days of cocaine. You know the rest. Everyone's seen Narcos. There was some early racism around the use of cocaine as well. And then you know the rest of the stories. That's enough for tonight. You know a little bit more about cocaine than you did yesterday. And that's another episode of Boyle Breaks History. And I'll see you the fuck later.